Good evening, and I would like to open and welcome you to our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, December the 16th, the last council meeting of the year. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous peoples. The township of Lucan Biddulph is located on the treaty and traditional territory and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples and is covered by several Upper Canada treaties. We honor and respect the history, languages, and cultures of the diverse Indigenous peoples who call Lucan Biddulph home. We endeavor to unlearn colonial mindsets and practices and to grow in knowledge. As we build meaningful relationships, we recognize contributions of Indigenous peoples and respect their leadership and partnership in shaping and strengthening our community. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Hey. Well, I'm sure you were like me and were shocked to learn of the news from Australia of the shooting that took place during Hanukkah celebrations over the weekend. This event is a sobering reminder that acts of violence and hatred can strike in even moments meant for celebration, faith, and community. In preparing my opening remarks for tonight, I referred back to a few other remarks that I have made over the last number of years when I have asked, what do these events that have taken place so far away have to do with Lucan Biddulph? It is important for all leaders to reflect on these events, and this is not done out of fear, but out of responsibility. These tragedies remind us of the need to remain vigilant in protecting public safety and in standing together against hatred, anti-Semitism, and all forms of violence. I know you join me in expressing supportive thoughts with the victims, their families, and the Jewish community, especially to our local Jewish community. The message of Hanukkah should not be lost on us as we reflect on this tragedy. Hanukkah is the triumph of hope and light over darkness. However, dark things seem now, we must not let go of that light. We must hope for, we must fight for, and we must stand up for a better and safer world. As a municipality, we do that by reaffirming our commitment to fostering a safe, inclusive, and respectful community where people of all faiths can gather and celebrate without fear. This is the third night of Hanukkah, and I want to wish all of our citizens in Lucan Biddulph and the region a happy Hanukkah and to really embrace the light because it will get them through the darkness that they are experiencing right now. So we do have a staff presentation to go into. And at this time, I am happy to welcome Catherine to present the draft budget for 2026. And I will acknowledge to those that are watching online that we're also joined by Tracy Loynes, who's been instrumental in the Finance Committee meetings and supporting Catherine in our budget deliberations. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So today staff and I are pleased to present to you the 2026 draft budget. I just want to say thank you to my colleagues and the members of the Finance Committee for getting us this far. We did have 2 meetings the end of October with the Finance Committee and a further one the end of November. And all the draft minutes have been included in the council packages. And new this year, all the meetings were streamed and are available to watch on YouTube. So with our budget, the most revenue we have is no surprise is it comes from our taxation from property taxes. I'm just going to flip through some of these major slides just in the interest of time to get to our discussion points this evening. Just a reminder, our tax bill is made up of 3 parts, and we're talking about the municipal portion that we have jurisdiction over, and it's about half of the tax bill overall. And the tax revenue, this shows you where the different property classes our revenue comes from, and these numbers are based on a 4.43% municipal tax rate increase. There's not really any change from the other years as far as the spread. And if there is a 4.43% tax rate increase, the increase on an average homeowner and with an assessment of $280,000 would be an increase of $88 for all of 2026. And that's just the municipal portion again. This next slide shows you the spread of what makes up our assessment growth. Again, the assessment has been, the total market assessment has been pushed off again. It's not clear it's unknown when that will occur. And the only one thing I want to highlight on this, you'll see a big spike in the multi-residential class, and that's in reference to the apartment buildings at 280 Main that came online. And we are part of the 2026 rule. And this next slide shows the expenses in the general government. You can see the larger spends there of administration and protective services, which is all your fire and police and conservation authorities and bylaw. And then our reserves, that's the money that's being put away for future projects and from a capital nature. And then the next slide shows more the breakdown of the public works expenses. The big one is, of course, in general, that's where all a lot of the people costs are as far as all the equipment and repairs and maintenance for that department. And on the Parks and Rec side, this is the revenue side. It shows the different revenue streams there. Of course, there's a lot from ice rentals. And the township levy, that's the amount that is the portion of the taxes collected to fund the Parks and Rec services. And on the other side of that is the expenses. The administration is the larger one, as it takes a really large team of dedicated staff to run all the programs and to maintain the parks and the facilities. So that's a highlight. All those numbers are based on all the details included in the package, and that's all based on a 4.43% tax rate increase at the time. So in our first draft of the budget that was discussed in detail with the Finance Committee at the end of October, we had a pretty large increase. And then over that month, before we met again, the end of November, there was some new information that came, and staff also looked at some items that could be adjusted. And that this chart shows that. And those were discussed at the November 26th meeting as well. So we had our tax roll that came in. So our first estimate was pretty close. Our OMPF was announced, and we actually came in higher than what we had estimated. Parks and Rec had a look at the revenue streams and came up with felt comfortable with an increase in revenue for 2026 there based on 2025 run rates and other initiatives. And that's on the revenue side. And then on the expenses, we've had some decreases in there. ABCA had their final amount, so we had overestimated that. So we brought that down to what they had approved. Our other payroll costs there were pretty bang on with what we had estimated. So, and the final numbers came in, not too much change there. And then we made a couple of changes on the contributions to reserves. And you'll see that on a later slide about how we came up with that by deferring some projects. So that brought that down to a net total of 254,000 a change to bring us closer, which would require a 7.94% tax rate increase. Of course, that's not something that we want to do. So there's other options. And to get to the 4.43, we use tax stabilization. But we'll get to that. That's another discussion point further down. So those are what came to the Finance Committee at the end of November, and they were discussed and were okay. And then there weren't any other changes other than what we're going to discuss on the next slide. So this is where we'll spend our time on these next two slides regarding some of the items that the Finance Committee thought was important to bring forward to council for a full discussion. So the first one there, and I'll mention it and then we'll talk about each one as we go along. And then before we move to the next one. So the draft budget includes $75,000 to add an admin level position at the administrative office. So I'll pass that off to Ron or Kathy, or if they want to start that discussion on that or proceed.
Okay, thank you. So through the mayor, sort of the reason behind this is we've known for a while now that we're kind of stretching our staff at the lower end of the admin structure, such that people are doing things that really could be done by someone else and to make the operation more efficient. So what the intent was by putting another position in here at the lower level is that we can take some of the things off certain staff members' plates, so to allow them to make better use of their skills in that position and sort of, I guess, collectively take a number of work items off everybody's plate and create one additional position and better allow the existing staff members to do their jobs. That's really bottom line. So I guess the question is, and it came up during the committee discussion, was are we sort of plugging a hole as opposed to looking at the overall structure? And that's when I think the consultant issue come up. Maybe we should be looking at a consultant to do an overall structure, look at the overall structure, and because maybe this isn't the right spot. Maybe it should be changed somewhat, and the structure should look like X versus what we now have is Y kind of thing. So I think that's the discussion that needs to happen. Number one, is council willing to entertain this idea first of all, and then if the answer is yes, then I guess the next step would be, do we go with a consultant route or do we just go with the CAO's recommendation?
Okay. So I'll give a little context also to the discussion that we had at budget. If for me, and you all received the budget document, the same budget document that we have. So it lays out the suggestion that we have this position, but there's no, what does the position do? It was just a position. And I was troubled by that because I don't think it's responsible just to hire somebody for the sake of hiring somebody, and that we have to defend hiring. And so then that led to kind of a more fulsome discussion. And as Ron said, we just use that analogy of just kind of plugging the gaps and everything. And so, to look at the organization overall, and I don't like to spend money needlessly, but hiring a consultant in my mind just gives us that third party, and that they have no relationship to any of the departments, any of the people here, and can look at what and how we do business here constructively. So that's how that discussion went. So I don't know if we want to take each of these as a discussion piece and then kind of build from there. So I guess I would look to see if there was any comment or need for clarification on anything. Councillor Regan.
I would like to comment, like, for sure, we would need some kind of internal review first to establish that, because I think we've grown enough and the responsibilities have expanded, and what happens with jobs a lot of the times is they morph into something that they were never intended to be. So I mean, a review of some kind, whether it's a consultant or an internal type of review. But I think before, for me anyway, and to the mayor's point about justifying any new staff, and we may find that we might need 1.5 staff. I don't know. So, and I'm not an HR expert. So I'm just wondering whether perhaps if we think about some sort of either an internal review, decide to establish what those needs are, maybe job descriptions, those sorts of things to be maybe rewritten and reestablished. I don't know if that's something that also needs to be done as well. But I'd be much more comfortable going forward with this if we knew exactly what our needs were, whether it be, to be honest, whether it be internally done by the CAO or done by a consultant. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments on that discussion point? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I guess my initial thoughts are I'm not really in favor of a consultant. I'm just hoping our senior staff with their CAO can I guess can look at positions. All I can do is refer to what Ron just said, and just that again, it seems like there's some maybe more clerical stuff that's burdening or that is become maybe too onerous on some staff. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Maybe this starts off as a 3-day-a-week position, a part-time position, and then from there throughout the year, maybe analyzing it. But again, we're not the City of London. I do hope our senior staff has an idea what the 3 or 4 employees are each doing and what they maybe shouldn't be doing or overdoing too much. I hope anyways. Thank you.
Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I was thinking maybe similar to what Deputy Mayor was saying. Like, I don't know, how much value we might get from the consultant, or if they're just gonna kind of tell us what we already know. Like, I think this is something we've been kind of aware of for a while. And Councillor Weston made some comments at the committee meeting as well, just about I guess like not wanting to burn out staff and make sure we're retaining our talent and that too. I think we probably have a good sense of like where the needs are. Our staff would have that knowledge for sure, and whether it's more information coming back to council through like a bit more of a detailed, I think, business case or some more analysis. I think that, in my opinion, I think it's maybe something that could be done internally. And maybe we look at carrying like the budgeted amount, have some further reporting on that before we decide exactly what we do with that. Or maybe that's, that report can also look at which approach we take, whether it's internal or external. But yeah, I think internally staff maybe have the best sense of where the need is, and we talked about some other areas as well, like asset management and HR, and maybe that can all get reviewed. So those are my thoughts on it.
Okay. So some things to consider. I know this is not going to come out the right way. And so I do say it respectfully. I really do. But the reality is, if we knew what we needed, there would have been a detailed job description in what was presented in the budget, and there wasn't. It was just a position, and we didn't know what the position was going to do or offer. And so I might push back on do we really know what we need? But that being said, understood that perhaps maybe we need to have a look at maybe a more formal staff report, comparing an internal audit as opposed to an external audit. I can tell you, I am not comfortable putting the 75,000 just as a plug number in the budget for a position that we don't know what it is. I would be comfortable with putting the estimated cost, just because then it's there almost as a placeholder to remind us that this is something that we need to be looking at. Because we can always come back if after an internal or an external audit comes and says that this is the position that you need, we can always come back and adjust the budget however we need to do that, or to find that money for that position if something like that happens. But I do think there needs to be some sort of audit before we go ahead and decide what it is we need for a position. So we'll park that one for now and then move on to the next one.
Okay, so the next one is regarding the OPP cost. So we got our number, beginning of December, and they already announced previously, and we included in the budget, the 11% increase. If there wasn't a cap, we would have an increase of 134,000 or another $61,000. If you remember, in 2025, we put aside the 114,000 in reserves to offset any future OPP increases. So in this draft of the budget, I used the full $73,765. That was the 11% increase. So that will leave $40,765 to use in 2027 or future. So my question to council is if that was appropriate use of that reserve at that full amount, or would you rather use a lesser amount for that? Say if you split it 50, you used half for this year and half for the 2027. There's no indication that we'll have another cap in future years. Will the following year be another 134,000? And therefore only have 40 to use against it. So that's my question to council.
So I know that you contemplated in the budget the 73,000. Like the 73,000, that's what you were thinking was going to be the announcement, correct? Like the increase of the 73. And then how did you contemplate the reserve being used, or have you at all?
I did. So in the budget, I included the 73,000 increase, and that's exactly what it came in. And to fund that, I'm making withdrawal from that reserve to fund that. So there's no effect on the tax base for that increase.
Okay.
So my question is, should I have used you want to use the full reserve for that, the reserve to cover that 73,000, or do you want to increase the tax base a little bit and only use some of that reserve if you
So-
want to save it for another year?
Right. So I guess that's where I was confused, because I thought you were recommending only withdrawing like half of the 114. But the budget document in front of us shows a strict in and out for that 73.
That's correct. So I used 73 of the 114, so that leaves 40 for another year. If you wanted more to save for another year, then that would just change and that would affect the tax rate to fund that increase.
Deputy Mayor?
I think, or you have to refresh my memory, I think that portion of reserve was earmarked for this, correct?
That's correct.
Yep, so that, like, it makes sense exactly what you're saying to me.
Yeah, so in
Yep.
2025, when we had done our budget at a higher amount and approved that, and then they came in, right before we approved it, they said, oh, no, we're gonna pull it back. And the difference was 114,000. So instead of, we proceeded with the tax rate increase that we had presented and just said, specifically earmark this, put it in reserve, and we'll use it because we know the costs are gonna go up in future. And then this year, they gave us that increase, but then they came back and said, we're gonna cap it at 11%, but could have been higher, and we wouldn't have had enough.
Yep, and then that is getting replaced at 73. Yeah, because 73,000 was already in there. Yep. Yep. Gotcha. No, I agree with your recommendation on that. Thank you.
Any other discussion points? I agree as well, but just with the caveat that there's probably an understanding that for 2027, there likely will be another 11% increase, because to make up for the announcement last year that they pulled back. So
And then we'd be just approximately 33,000 late.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
If, yep. But at least we've already, pre-planned for these increases. So,
Yep.
Yeah, so if there's an increase next year, if there's no 11% cap, again, we'll have 40,000 to use to offset that increase to, against and then the difference will have to come from tax rate, but we have no idea if they'll come up with anything else, but, the indication is that there's costs are going up in the OPP world, so. Okay. Okay, so The next one is regarding the transfer from tax stabilization reserve. So if we kept everything the same and to get to a 4.43% tax rate increase, we identified that comes from, there's a number of one-time costs in the 2026 budget, and I have those listed in the report for this meeting. And like, I know there's always going to be one-time costs, but if you want to use the tax stabilization reserve to offset these one-time costs, that could help bring the tax rate down. That's where that comes from. So now, if council has any other changes, but if maybe you're more comfortable with a higher tax rate increase, for example, if you wanted to go to a 4.99%, you wouldn't have to use as much from tax stabilization. And I have that listed in my report. If everything stayed the same, you only have to use 180, just under 182,000 of tax stabilization reserve to balance the budget. And then have a 4.99% tax rate increase if everything else stayed the same. So I just wanted to get direction from council if you're comfortable with that, or do you want it to go for a higher tax rate? Of course, you have to decide on the other, or if there's other changes that you want to see in the budget, such as the 75,000 that we just talked about a few moments ago, or if you see something else that you'd like to see change or where you'd like to be. If you want to compare to our neighbors where tax rates are, they're in the 5s. I know some that are well in the process, have near the approval, and they're in the 5s. I know there's 3 of them like that, or higher once they finish. I'm not sure where the county is. I think they're a bit lower. Others were trying to be in the 4s. So I think in the 4.5 to 5 is fair. But again, I look to council for how best they want to use it. If there's opportunity to use the tax stabilization reserve to offset a larger increase. So that's what I need to know.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Look to council for discussion on that. Deputy Mayor.
Just, you flew through that pretty quick. I just wanted to verify. I think that's a good idea. It just seems like there's more, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I guess, the more one-time charges in this budget than previous years probably. And again, using the tax stabilization for that makes sense, because if it's an ongoing cost, it makes no sense to put it to that, because it's just going to creep up on us. So I guess I got 2 questions. When you had also said about the 188 or 189, why did you bring that up again? Why did you bring, is that 216,000 to cover all the one-time costs, and that's it, correct?
Yeah, so in the report, there's a list, and it's about 216,000.
Yeah.
Different things in there. Of course, I can't see what happened in the future if there's going to be something similar. Like this year, we had so for 2026 election year, so there's an increase there that'll happen once every 4 years. Do you want to affect the tax rate for that? There's some other larger ones like the whale and line costs, since we transferred that to the county. They're already in that agreement. We committed to a certain number of certain costs for 2026 only. So
Right.
that won't carry forward. So are some of that, could there be some maintenance that, okay, it's this time, it's this big pothole, but will something come up in the future that we have to then put in?
So the question you're asking kind of us is somewhat is if we wanted to take a potential result would be 499. If we wanted to reduce that from 216 to whatever you said there, 188.
Yeah, so it'll be, if it's 4.99 and everything else stays the same, it'd be just under 182,000 to pull from. I just listed that the 216, that's gives you some justification for using that as an option. That's what that would look like.
Right.
If
Okay.
that's what you'd like.
No, for now, certainly the way this sits, I'm satisfied with your, again, I'll call it the committee's recommendation. Thank you.
I just wanted to throw, I'm in concurrence. I agree with that recommendation for the 4.43 and using the 216. So I'm okay with that.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, through you. Just to clarify, with the one-time costs, these are things that like they don't really qualify, or we wouldn't call them capital projects. Is it because like the dollar amount for these, or I'm just wondering the difference between one-time costs and maybe capital costs.
I think they're more of uh, like maintenance in nature, and that's why they're not capital. Like it's a cumulative of things going on in there. That there's more of a maintenance thing than a capital project per se.
Okay, and so they would like they're paid for through like the operating line items. Is that correct? Like, are those line items then going up to count for these items?
Yeah, so if you looked at the detail, you'd see like some of those line items in the operation budget would be increased, and those are the reasons for them. In the more detailed report, they're listed there. And why those are taking place, I guess. So there are a part of the operating budget, which is then funded from the tax base. If you want to move them to capital, I guess if there's enough in reserves, you could use those, but I guess you're still going to use reserves in some fashion, I guess. Or raise taxes to compensate for those. So you don't want to raise them just to cover maybe these one-time costs or something that happens once every 4 years or something like that.
Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, I'm in agreement with Deputy Mayor and other Councillor Regan. Coming down to that number, I think it's good, and then having some, I guess, something to rationalize it with the one-time costs, it does kind of help. Just turning to the reserves though, and looking at our tax stabilization, it's a pretty big draw on that, and I think hopefully we can put some money back into that. And so if we have a surplus at the end of the year, oftentimes we'll allocate that towards that reserve, correct?
Yeah, so when we finish off 2025, we'll come back to council with hopefully an anticipated surplus, and then council could decide where to allocate that. In the past, we have done tax stabilization, some other reserves. It depends on what council would like to do at the time. So when we get to that, then that's definitely, and we've done that before. Goes right in there as a balancing. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Catherine.
Okay, any other discussion on the recommendation, tax stabilization? Okay.
So if I want to circle back to, so say like if that 75,000 or some lower number came out, then, and you still wanted to have a 4.43% tax rate increase, then you wouldn't just have to draw, that 216 would then be reduced by what you take out of the expense. So if that's where you want to land as far as a tax rate increase. So that's all the discussions I had regarding the tax rate itself. The last item for discussion, if you want me to move to that, is in addition to the tax rate increase, we're proposing a additional special levy in particular for fire capital. So this idea came up and it was discussed with staff and at the finance committee meeting, and proceed to mention this with council. So we know that there is a need for an emergency vehicle. That's one of the fire trucks is up for replacement. What that looks like will be determined when the new director of emergency services starts, but I know there's one that's at its end of its life. And there's not enough money in the reserves to fund the full amount of that truck, and maybe another one in the not so distant future. So the idea was put a specific and transparent levy on the tax bill to raise that money over a number of years, and for example 4 years, or could be longer, but we'll start for at least 4 years. And if the amount is $75 a year per tax roll, you have approximately 930,000 at the end of that 4 years. So that's the proposal. It doesn't have to be $75. It could be something less, but a new truck is in the neighborhood of the $850,000. And it does take a couple years of lead time to get possession of. So there is some need to move on something, and what that looks like. This was the idea that came to light and for council to discuss.
Okay. Discussion and thoughts on this item. Counselor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maybe just generally, I just wanted to ask, I guess, why the special levy and why not, I guess, through the normal budget process? I assume we have to buy other equipment and such. And just wondering the decision to go with special levy.
I think the idea was that it was something that we could put on and see special one time. It's short-lived instead of getting lost within the tax levy itself. And then you could easily pull it out and be done with it if you want. And then it's not, and then it's there, everyone knows, it's almost like this is my donation to the fire department every year for every property. The same. You could put it within the tax base, and have, say, like a 3% tax rate increase that goes right to the fire capital, like a special levy that way. For example, to raise those kinds of funds. But I thought this was the best way to, easiest way to, and most transparent way to say what this money is for. And it's easy to pull it back out. It's right there on the tax bill, but I'm open to options.
Okay, thank you. And then just to confirm, it is for like in terms of the vehicle or piece of equipment, it's for a fire truck, correct? Or
Yes, it'll be specifically for fire services, for vehicles, probably a fire truck, most likely, because that's what's up for replacement.
thank you.
If I was just wondering, the 75 per year or the whatever it is, 100 a year that we're doing, is that all at once? Or is that just over the tax, the tax bills that we pay? That's going to be spread out over the years.
We can look at what we do if it's just the $75 that shows up on the August bill, and then it's split between two payments. Or if we can add it to the interim or not, I don't know. We can, so it can be split between 4 payments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Just curious.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm really flip-flopping on this one, how much I like it or not. You know, and even Steven amongst 3,100 people, I just compared to how we pay for everything else, and it's, you know, the properties that are valued on, you know, throughout our community vary, and collecting from the same property owner, I can't get my head around that. I don't I just you know, I think the traditional way we've done that is you know, on buying equipment. I you know, I think we're kidding ourselves. You know, you open this tax bill, and right now what we're going to debate is an 8% tax increase. Don't care, to me, anyways, how we want to argue it. That's an 8% increase we're looking at. I just don't know if I'd like the, you know, the $75 spread out evenly amongst every person in our community. I don't think that's fair. You know, or do we start off at $25 or $50? And again, I've made this comment to Ron and Kathy. You know, we haven't had a ton of robust growth in our community, like new, you know, subdivision stuff. We got some coming up, our sewer plant. We're gonna have some expansion. And as our tax base increases, it'd be nice to pivot from this and start a, you know, have some better news stories going forward in a few years, hopefully because of growth and our tax base. I'm not, you know, our tax base goes up, and then allocating that money traditionally how we would. So that's what I'm struggling with. I certainly am not in favor of the $75. I'm in favor of a lower number, and ideally converting it over potentially to a reserve. But certainly that will get the message out when our ratepayers open their tax bill of what we need to do. And you know, I don't have the magic answer on how we pay for it. Our community needs to pay for it, I realize, but how we get there, I don't like this. I don't like this full amount being even Steven. So that's my comment.
Do we know, I think maybe we asked this question during the finance committee meetings. Do we know of other eh, neighboring communities or other communities in the area region that have done a similar thing? I can't imagine that this is a new idea. I would suspect that maybe it is. Maybe it is no, but I just wonder, if anybody has done something like this in our area.
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't done like a full deep dive. I think others have a capital levy portion as far as a percentage goes, or raising money for capital, like that specifically. But I don't know about a local improvement, so to speak, on a tax bill. Like we do with the,
But this idea, like, so it's born out of that sort of that capital special levy that other municipalities collect for. So it's that's would be the same sort of idea.
But if I may, Madam Mayor, I think we are aware of other municipalities that have added 2% on the levy, on the municipal levy for asset management purposes. So you're going to hear a presentation later today on asset management. And, according to the math, we're supposed to be putting X away, per year. And typically municipalities are nowhere near that amount. So in order to bridge the gap from where the municipality presently is to where they should be in accordance with the asset management plan, some municipalities are saying, they're adding a 2% on top of sort of the regular tax levy specifically for asset management purposes. So that kind of speaks to what the deputy mayor was talking about earlier. So instead of a flat rate per property, that's an alternative, is to have a percentage that would increase with the values of the properties. So that would be another way to do sort of the same thing. Yeah.
Any other further discussion on this? Yeah, Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just to confirm, and looking at the numbers, I think Catherine said 850,000 for a new truck. But it's saying it's gonna raise 930,000, and I'm just wondering if we'd have also whether we're gonna sell the old unit and whether that's gonna raise some money. I'm just wondering if that's kind of that sort of financial analysis has been done, and or we kind of just land on in the $75, more of just like a starting point.
yeah, that was more of a starting point to get what that would look like to raise. Because that's the cost of a truck now. Who knows what inflation will do, what the cost will be when we actually have to go pay for it in 4 years. If there's a second truck that also has to be replaced, like a lot of their equipment is aging, so depending on what the needs come out in the next year, we need to be raising some money towards to be able to pay for those equipment. But what that looks like, don't know what the price will be in 3 years, but that gives in a ballpark. So if you say maybe you want to do $50, what that look like, probably palatable as well. But I thought this is what a $75 would look like on that many properties. And we had it spread out evenly because the fire truck's going to show up to your field or your house, regardless of how big it is. So everyone's using the service the same, is kind of the thought behind having it the same amount for everybody. But I can see the argument also, like, based on your assessment, because that's how everything else is done. As long as be transparent. So if you wanted to have a separate levy, I think something has to be done in order to raise the funds for this, either, or you just say no and go and fundraise, or increase, we do a 20% increase to the fire department, the cost, and give them a 20% increase to use for their operation, and also put money away into reserves. And it's not enough to cover a cost of the truck. So something has to be done. This is an approach. This is an idea, good or bad, or maybe there's something else that can be done, but that's the discussion to had. So if it could be less, or do something now and then see how that goes and do something higher later as you get more pricing, there's options, but just something has to happen, I think.
Oh, thanks for all that. I didn't really think too much about what Deputy Mayor said about, just everyone's being charged that same rate. And I'm just, there's circumstances where that's gonna work out unfairly. I'm thinking if the situation, say there's an apartment building that's all rentals, is that one property that's paying $75? Or, how does it work in those situations? So, I don't know if looking, that's maybe a reason to go towards the more traditional approach. Um, maybe that's one concern there.
Okay, any other points on that? Okay. Do you want to just keep moving on and then we can kind of circle back? I'm kind of gathering actually from the discussion and I might be assuming something, but like we don't have to pass the budget tonight, right? We can accept this for information and we can take it back to digest the comments that have been made too, and think about some of the discussion we've had. So there's no pressure that we have to pass this tonight. So I know we do have a planning meeting at 6, so I would just say to Catherine, maybe just keep going on this.
Okay. So the next slide is regarding the capital projects. We did have our full council meeting. We represented all the capital projects the end of October. In that time, as I mentioned, when we talked about the changes for the operations to bring down the amount required to, from the tax levy to fund the reserve for the projects, these projects were chosen to be deferred, either to a future year or indefinitely. So the soccer field bleachers at the Premier Field, defer that to 2027. Defer the Grant and Pavilion curtains to 2027. Defer or indefinitely the community center digital sign project. And then reduce the amount for the walking trail at the soccer complex to 100,000. That would, in the first budget, we had 140. That would be for an asphalt topping, but the 100,000 would allow for the base to be prepared for future asphalt and have a stone dust in the meantime. And then we chose to defer the additional sidewalk machine and the attachments to early 2027. And that would help spread the cost out of what's required for the reserve in 2026. In the report to the attachment, there is a full attachment in the agenda is a full list of the capital projects and how they'd be funded is there for your information as well. And along with that, attached to that is the reserve summary as that tells you where, if all this goes through, where all those numbers would land. So that information is there for you as well. And then I'll just highlight in the water and wastewater. We did talk about the capital projects at that same capital council meeting, and the highlights in the water and wastewater system is you'll see the $40,000 in each system there that is for the consultant to prepare the utility operator contract. And it's a total of 80,000 and it's a split 50-50. So it's not the same 40, it's 40 for each. Other than that, we're continuing on with the plan that we had when we did our water review there last year. So that's all for that. And then, so the next steps, if there's more questions or discussion amongst council, and if there's, of course, any changes, we can bring back a report for final approval in January, or if council may choose to adopt or provide direction to council or to staff today, and it's up to council now. Thank you.
Okay, all right, council. I know exactly, that's what it sounded like. Councilor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had questions on 2 items that were just in those last couple slides. I wanted to ask about on the water and wastewater, the $40,000, like $80,000 for the consultant to prepare the operator contract, and just that jumps out to me as being a big number. And I know we use county procurement. I understand it's probably a complex and important contract, but I just wanted to ask maybe why that cost seems so high to me. And it is a user funded thing as well, correct, through the wastewater system. So it's funded through the rates. But yeah, maybe just if I don't know if we have any comments on the cost of that.
So the water and wastewater are self-funded by the users, so it's nothing in here is affected by the tax rate. An explanation regarding the project, I'm gonna defer to Jeff.
Thank you, Catherine, and through the mayor. So I actually contacted county procurement and asked them for advice on moving forward with this. And Josh at the county came back with the $80,000 as an estimate to put in the budget for a consultant to do this work for. So I'm just going by their expertise on that line item, because it is a kind of a special, it's something that's not done a lot. Yeah, so that's where it came from.
Madam Mayor, if I can just add to that. So what our expectation is that this consultant will assist in preparing the tender, because county procurement doesn't have that specialized knowledge in order to be able to do that. So the consultant will actually work with county procurement in preparing the tender for the overall operations of not only our water system, but also the sewer system. So what we're trying to do is combine both, and that's why you'll see 40,000 from the water budget and 40,000 from the sewer budget.
Yeah, and just to make sure we're clear, it's not so much the tender that'll go out, it'll be the agreement that follows the tender, the legal, the consultant is going to actually assist us writing the agreement for the utility. So that's really the bread and butter of that cost. It's not so much the tender itself, it's the agreement that will follow.
And then it's the evaluation as well, because again, county procurement, I'm looking at it from my history with Lake Huron, and obviously that contract is much larger, but it's the same sort of idea. We're going to be in the position where we have to put the contract and tender out for it. And so like all this year, working with a consultant to develop that package, because again, just the scope of it, right? So.
Okay, thanks for all that. And yeah, I know lawyers are very expensive, so it's a big agreement. I was going to ask about the wastewater system. I was just going back to the sanitary master plan and that modeling, and I went back and listened to some of Jeff's comments about that. And I was going to ask about the urgency of this project and if that's something we would potentially consider putting off, but I recognize that this isn't anything that affects the tax rate either. So I don't think putting it off is going to save us on any, bringing down the tax rate. So I think I can just park that and I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions on or comments on what's been presented and kind of where we're at? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, just input on the I actually the fire truck replacement. The more I think about it, and people probably, again, I think people with larger tax bills and seeing the 2 or 3, 4% on that and multiple properties are probably going to, everyone's going to be not happy about it. Just like us sitting here, we're not, I'm sure none of us are happy about it neither, that we're looking at this. I guess I'm leaning much more towards setting up another reserve for the replacement fire truck, and then and adding it to the tax rate. So again, instead of a 4.33, I'm not saying 8.33, or depending on whether this gets tweaked, but then maybe 3%, and we and I guess you try to get the messaging out that this is for replacement vehicles. We're setting up a new reserve line. Start at that. Maybe we shuffle money in there over the years, but start at that. And I guess a quick comment, from hearing the mayor and our CAO talk on the adding of staff there. I guess I would look at reducing that down to potentially a part-time or consultant so that, you know, see what's needed for the new year, like the following year. So whether that gets reduced down to 25,000. I guess those are my two comments on those. And like I say, the fire ones, I just think we need to rip the Band-Aid off, I guess. You know, it just seems like we're trying to hide it, or not trying to hide it, just trying to come up creatively with a separate, like Catherine said, there's, you know, probably another truck and then another truck. And we're trying to, again, I don't believe it'll just be 4 years myself. We'll be saving for equipment. And that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah, I would say we're not trying to hide it. I think the staff is saying it would be, yeah, I know that there is a line item. So just so that I'm clear, you're kind of thinking instead of maybe the dollar amount, that is a percentage, but again, it's a separate line. Oh,
I do think, I do think people with multiple properties and seeing that separate line charge as opposed to that, you know, we've decided to set up a new reserve for the replacement of emergency vehicles and not, I guess I'm not opposed to the 2 or 3% on the tax bill, but I guess hence maybe take this for information for tonight, but I'm trying to get my head around that. Yeah, just, yep. Thank you.
thanks. Any other comments about where we're at? Councillor Hodgson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank Catherine and all the staff that have put work in this and the Finance Committee for all their work on the budget.
Appreciate that. Any other comments? Great. So, next step, so maybe we should just look at accepting this for information. And I mean, the deputy mayor has made the suggestion about the fire levy and maybe how that looks. But you've provided a suggestion, and you've also talked about the extra position, maybe what that line item looks like. So what I would say to council is, you know, take the document back, think about what we've talked about, watch the meeting back again, think of the comments. And if you think of something, suggest it to Catherine, and maybe we can bring this back for the January 13th meeting. We can do that. And I would look to staff. You'll know what the agenda looks like, whether or not you think we should start early or whether a 6 o'clock start will, because I don't know what's on the agenda, but we'll look at more information. So maybe council, just in the back of your mind, prepare for a 5 o'clock start, but if staff thinks that the agenda is okay, then it'll be, oh, that's right, you're not going to be here. Okay, so we can, as I say, think about it and let staff know, and we can look at how we discuss it on the 13th, okay? And I would echo Councillor Hodgson's comments about thank you to everybody involved, Catherine, Tracy, and then all of the senior staff for putting together the budget documents to get us to where we are today. If I can get a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, oh, it takes us to 5:59. Okay, we will just take a minute here. I guess, did I need a Okay, we're good. Okay, so we are back at it. And we have to move into a public meeting to meet under the Planning Act. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder so to adjourn our regular meeting at 4 minutes after 6 and reconvene into a public meeting under the Planning Act. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? That's carried. So in front of us tonight, we have a zoning bylaw amendment application for a property on Saintsbury Line, and it is the Timber Ridge subdivision. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dan to take us through.
Through the chair, thanks, Mayor and members of council today. So do appreciate you hearing me. Usually hear from Melissa. She wasn't able to be here with us today, so we'll get through this together. With that said, gotta remember here. So the purpose and effect of this particular application for zoning bylaw amendment is to amend two of the existing site-specific exception zones. Those being the R1-11 and the R1-12, which are both located in the Timber Ridge subdivision, so the east side of Saintsbury Line. So as applied, the applicant is seeking to amend both of those zones by increasing the maximum lot coverage provision for single-family dwellings, which would be from 40% to the requested 45% lot coverage. So as noted, the lands are within the Timber Ridge subdivision. They are located both in phase 1 and phase 2 of the development. As you may recall, phase 1 does include 61 single-family home lots, and as well as one block for medium density development. Phase 2, which is outside of the lotted draft plan approved application at this point, is conceptually designed for single family homes as well as semi-detached dwellings. So the request to increase the maximum permitted lot coverage is based primarily on industry and provincial standards to build more homes on less lands. Smaller lot sizes do create a more efficient growth pattern for land while limiting the potential loss for agricultural parcels within our communities. So in order to achieve a similar pattern of existing single-family home development in terms of size and scale, an increase to the maximum permitted lot coverage would allow individuals to build those similar sizes that we see within our existing communities today. So it is noted that we have received a letter stating concerns with respect to the impact of the potential of the development from both more so, I guess, our perspective of stormwater management and control within the existing areas within the sub watershed. So I would note that staff also did share this initial concern when we did receive the application. We did have that discussion with the applicant off the get-go. Our Public Works Director did forward this information on to our third-party engineer review, which was GM Blue Plan. And they did review the overall engineering for the subdivision plan and noted that the existing storm system is designed to take more than the impervious surface that would be imposed through this amendment. So we do have lots of space within the existing stormwater management control system for this particular subdivision. So they did not have a concern or did not flag that as a concern moving forward. So we did discuss this point further, as I noted, and while we do share the concern, we're satisfied that it would not pose a threat to the existing stormwater management system, as this property is, again, this would only primarily be for phase 1 at this particular point in time. Phase 2 would get designed into a separate stormwater management pond, as it is a separate sub watershed altogether, and we would account for that in that detailed engineering design. So what I would say, it is noted that the increased lot coverage are likely to be considered more holistically within the municipality, as we are currently striving to achieve more efficient development patterns and reduce our impacts on our agricultural lands. So I think in terms of council's information available as well to the public, we're already seeing a push from the province to do more with less. And what that means is smaller lot sizes inherently mean we're trying to get more development on those lots to achieve the same development patterns that we have within our existing communities. Individuals still want the same size homes, so we're forced to kind of reconsider what our existing engineering standards are and design our subdivisions appropriate to those standards. So that's what we're doing, and it's likely to see, you're going to see that moving forward relatively soon through our future half funding initiatives through our comprehensive zoning bylaw reviews as well. So taking that into consideration, we have reviewed this proposed amendment and find that it is consistent with the provincial planning statement, and would note that it also conforms to the county as well as Lucan's respective official plans. So we are recommending approval of the requested amendment and that a bylaw be brought forward for consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dan. We are joined virtually by the agent that's working for the applicant, Connor Wilkes. And I would just ask Mr. Wilkes if you have any comment you would like to make at this time. I know that you are also available for questions should questions come from council, but I will ask if you have any comment to make at this point.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. At this time, I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Questions or comments from council? Deputy Mayor.
Well, I did talk to Dan a little bit on this, and I guess it was interesting. Because there's, him even using the words we want more, building on a lot. It's, and unfortunately, the public thinks that and it is a developer obviously wanting that as well, but it is a shared concern of the provincial government and municipal government of having a higher lot coverage. And I guess, and I asked Dan, I said, like, it's when you cover more and you have more asphalt, more sidewalks, more coverage, like if the engineering report came back that the lot coverage couldn't be 45%, what options do they have? And then the option they have is I believe you said, to increase their storm pond, correct? So it is all engineered to reassure, I guess, the public on these things. I guess the only thing is, Dan, these meetings are public meetings for us to put up our hand to go from 40%, I think it's 40% to it's 40 to 45. And can you just elaborate again, why we just don't have it at 45?
Yeah, so through the chair, what I would say is when we look at the bylaw, our existing lot standard for the traditional R1 zone, which, as time moves on, we try to do things a bit differently, be a little bit more efficient with our use of services and municipal services. We tend to see that the lot sizes just shrinking across the industry. And that's also a reflection of not only doing things more efficiently on our end, but also an affordability perspective from the future purchasers of these lands. So when we see newer subdivisions coming forward with our bylaw that hasn't been, more holistically updated and replaced, we see site-specific zones coming in suggesting smaller lot sizes. And when we get those smaller lot sizes, the public has a perception that they want a certain size of dwelling to exist on that lot, which is then pushing us to reconsider what our lot coverages are for our development within our subdivision. So where we may have, in our traditional subdivisions had, 450 square meter lots or 500 square meter lots, which you could get, a 2,500 square foot house on and still meet that 30% lot coverage. Now we're seeing, those 350 square meter lots or 400 square meter lots where they're still trying to fit the same size house. So when you do that, we have to increase our lot coverages to make sure that we can still provide the product that our members of the constituents want to see.
Thank you.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you. I guess, Dan, just the question I have is that when you have one homeowner that wants to somebody has a lot and they want to build a house and they want to go to 45%. it's not gonna have that much of an effect on the neighborhood and on drainage and things like that. But my concern is that as we start building, putting more and more lot coverage, it's gonna have an impact. And I'm concerned about like, at what point do we say like that's, you gotta stop doing that? Cause I mean, it's one house, somebody owns a lot, wants to build a house. And I want it at 45%, it's not gonna have an effect. But if you got 100 houses being built and you've got, the lot coverage is a smaller lot, more coverage, it's gonna have an effect at some point. So how do we determine, where we say, no, we can't do it anymore? It's just I guess more of a comment, I guess, but I get concerned about that because all of a sudden you've got 60-70% coverage, and you got a lot of asphalt and a lot of cement. So
Yeah, through the chair. So great point, honestly. In this particular case, we're looking at a brand new subdivision, and we're designing the infrastructure to withhold that consideration for impervious surfaces. I think the situation you're more so referring to is in existing subdivisions where we might have issues already with drainage and storm and increasing potential lot coverages in those particular situations. A lot of stuff that we deal with at the staff level, and Jeff can probably speak to this as well, is not necessarily based on the actual subdivision design. It's based on the homeowners manipulating their lots and changing drainage patterns that are engineered and designed. So what I mean by that is there could be existing subdivisions that have swales built into the back of the properties, and someone places a shed there. And when you place a shed there, you now block the water flow pattern from all the lots that are flowing through that area, which then backs the water up. So that's more the issue that we tend to deal with at the municipal level within our existing subdivision. So I do agree that, we'll probably have to put some information together, to homeowners. We already do that, an educational aspect to it. But certainly when we're dealing with the newer subdivisions, it's much easier to build that into the storm design to say we need to capture this much more extra water because we know that we're going to have X amount percent lot coverage beyond what we previously considered. And that's also a direct result, keep in mind, of the province's push to go towards additional residential units within our subdivisions. That's inherently going to create larger homes, more development on our urban parcels.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment. I just say that I think we all maybe shared the same concern there, and we heard that we got the letter from the member of the public about the stormwater. That's kind of the big thing that jumps out with this. But I think the important thing that Dan addressed and was that we've had our engineer or our peer review engineer, verify that analysis has been done and that infrastructure can be handled. So I think that's the really important piece here. This is a subdivision. This is eventually going to be, municipal property that we have to own and assume. So that's, I think, the most important piece of, due diligence that had to be done there. So since Dan addressed that, I'm comfortable with this now. Thank you.
Thanks. Just with regards to the letter that we did receive, the resident does bring up a point about how, and you kind of, and when you talked about the difference between a new subdivision and then making adjustments in an existing subdivision. So, yep, this is a new subdivision. We know they have to look after their own and it's going to be designed that way. But how do we protect the residents that are already here for something that potentially doesn't go the way that it should? So what are the protection mechanisms available to the residents that are already here?
Yeah, so what I would say is when I'm dealing with this particular question, I'm just dealing with it in the perspective of this request for a new subdivision application. In this particular instance, we need to ensure that the existing storm design for this particular subdivision can handle that additional impervious surface within the entire network of the stormwater management plan. So easy for us to make that consideration in this case, not as easy when we're looking at more holistically the municipality and increasing those lot coverage percentages. I might turn that over to Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff's waving his finger
Yeah, I know.
emojis.
I'll try not to confuse the issue too much, but in a new development, there's certain requirements. So all the stormwater that is on this property has to be addressed on this property. In this case, there's really three components to stormwater. There's the mains, the catch basins, the infrastructure that goes in the ground to control and take the water to the stormwater pond and the pond itself. So the first one is that the engineering of that system has to meet the standards. We're not lowering the standards. The standards are not changing on the amount of lot coverage. So those standards still have to be met. That means that if the infrastructure has to be built bigger, the storm pond has to be made bigger to handle the surges. That's what it'll do. The second part of the stormwater is each lot and each area, there's a coefficient of runoff. So if you have so much grass versus gravel, versus pavement, versus downspouts and roofs, so all that gets figured in. In this case, in this development, they're using a very conservative 0.65% coefficient. They technically could be using 0.7. So when we did review it, we noticed that their design is going to be less than what they could be. So we're confident that even though with this more lot coverage, they're still going to be able to meet the conservative figure of 0.65% coefficient on runoff. So that's another component that gets checked. And then the third component is when we have one of those 100, 200-year storms where we see, a downpour of water that cannot be contained. And we call that the overland flow route. And so now in the subdivisions, because of climate change and just the general design of these developments, overland flow has become one of the most important aspects of a development. So we have to see where this development puts those overland flows and how it goes. So in this case, we actually have an agreement. The water can't be diverted. It has to follow the natural flow to the outlet, which is the Whitfield drain further down on Saintsbury. In this case, we know it goes across private property. In this case, there's an agreement with that private property to take the overflow and that's only for phase one. So there's multiple phases that will come in the future. And again, that overland flow will be one of the most important things that gets designed into the development. We do not allow that overland flow to go across someone's property that it never traveled before, that it could interfere or flood with someone else. So that really becomes an important aspect of this. So in this case, one of the first things that we wanted to do was make sure that the runoff coefficient was fine, which for phase one, our engineering team came back and said it was very conservative, so we're fine there. The next phases will all still have to meet that same standard. Just because they will build more on a lot does not mean they get let off on the building standards. They still have to meet the standards. So I just wanted to explain how we came to this agreement that we, as the engineering side of things, we're comfortable with the stormwater design.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I just want to confirm, because this zoning bylaw amendment is for both phases, but the second phase will be looked after with its own stormwater management pond, like the pond that I think they're putting in a temporary one for phase one, but phase two will have its own pond, correct?
Yes, so through the chair, that's exactly correct. So the reason why we split it in the phase lines that we have for the Timber Ridge subdivision is basically because that's the split of where what we call the sub watershed is and where water goes to specific drains. So it made sense from a cost efficiency perspective that all development on phase one would go to this temporary storm pond, to the future regional pond. And then anything subsequent to that which will be phase two, will go to a new storm pond that would be developed as part of that phase.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay. And you're, okay. Then I will say that there is a motion in front of us that application for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 7/2025 for the parcel of land owned by 2219260 Ontario Inc., legally described as part of lots 27 and 28, concession 5 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, County, Middlesex, be approved, and that the bylaw be forwarded for consideration of council. And the reasons have been outlined in Dan's report. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. With that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn our public planning meeting at 6:25. And reconvene our regular meeting. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we do have a delegation now with Aqua and joining us virtually. I think he's here. Is he here? Paul, there he is. He just has to turn his camera on. There he is. Paul Sherbin, from Aqua, the Senior Operations Manager. Thank you very much for joining us, Paul. It's great to see you. Glad you could join us virtually, and I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and municipal. Tonight, I'm presenting the third quarter of the 2025 Lucan Biddulph Operations Report. Excuse me. To date in 2025, the Lucan Water Pollution Control Plant has had 2 non-compliances. Both non-compliances were for exceeding the ECA limit of final effluent total phosphorus. The first exceedance was in May, and the second one was in September. These exceedances were due to low alkalinity coming into the plant and the subsequent difficulty of balancing pH levels with aluminum sulfate addition of phosphorus removal. The plant is now using an additional caustic soda to increase the alkalinity, stabilize the pH, and allow the increased aluminum sulfate dosage to reduce the phosphorus levels. There have been no overflows, bypasses for either the Lucan or Granton wastewater treatment plant to date in 2025. However, there were 2 spills reported in the third quarter for the Lucan WPCP. The first occurred on July 11th, when a section of the effluent pipe was found leaking into a hole in the ground on the plant property. An estimate of 252 cubic meters of effluent was spilled. The pipe was repaired and no adverse impact to the ground property was observed. Appropriate notifications were made. The second spill occurred on September 24th due to a mechanical bar screen failure and a corroded bypass channel. Raw sewage leaked onto the floor of the headworks building and onto the Lucan Water Pollution Control Plant property through the doorway. The bar screen was reset and the bypass channel has since been repaired. No adverse effects were observed in the Lucan Water Pollution Control Plant property. Appropriate notifications were made. The Lucan WPCP is currently at 76% of its rated capacity. There have been 53 days to date in 2025 where the raw flow exceeded the ECA capacity of 1,700 cubic meters per day. There were no days when the plant has been outside of normal operating conditions. The Granton wastewater treatment plant is currently at 39% of its rated capacity. There have been 8 days to date in 2025 where the raw flow exceeded the rated capacity of 270 cubic meters per day. The Granton wastewater treatment plant ECA does not require additional sampling for above the rated capacity. There has been 1 non-compliance in the third quarter for low dissolved oxygen and final effluent of the Grant wastewater treatment plant. Grant wastewater treatment plant is out of compliance for the month of October and November due to the monthly average ammonia exceedance. Granton's ammonia limit is 3 milligrams per liter. Our monthly average was 10.8. It is suspected that the total ammonia nitrate exceedance in September, October, and November was caused by an abnormal influent that entered the treatment plant at the end of September. On September 26, operations staff noted a raw influent appeared yellow in color and an onion-like odor. On September 29th, the operations staff of the municipality conducted an inspection of the collection system to determine the source of the abnormal influent. Process upset was observed as a result of the abnormal influent with low dissolved oxygen concentrations, thus inhibiting the nitrification process. We have since began adding biological SR2, which is a food to help the bugs grow, as well as pressure wash the outside of the RBC to remove the old dead bugs and help the new bugs. Our latest lab results showed an ammonia results of 4.4 milligrams per liter, which is dropped significantly since the lab results in November 19th, which was 11.8. We continue to closely monitor this issue and take steps, and the ammonia levels do not continue dropping over the coming weeks. Some general maintenance that's taken place, whereas we did participate in several game days for the demand response program and some sludge hauls. A few alarms was a power disruption, a blower RAS pump failure, RAS no flow, and an intrusion alarm, the wind causing a door sensor. There has been no community complaints reported. This concludes the third quarter report for 2025. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Paul. And I will look to council for any questions on that report. Councillor Hodgins. I
Thanks, Paul, for the report. I wanted to ask about what that if you found out what was going on in Granton there with that strange influence. Did you guys have any pinpoint that or know what was going on there?
No, so we did work with the municipality. We did work with them. We went through all the manholes to see if we could find it. By that point, whatever something has gone through there, it was gone already into the plant. So they put it through in one batch and got rid of it, or we don't know where it come from. We tried to check everything and we did our best.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff's just going to jump in.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Paul. Through the mayor, I'll just maybe follow up on that because Andrew, our township employee, did go to some of the areas in town and look and do some examination to see if any indication of if there was any getting into the system, and also visited one of the larger businesses in the area just to have a talk to see if there was anything that could have been happening that maybe got washed into the system. I would say that I don't remember this happening before. So it is, to me, at this point, it's a one-off. And that, we'll definitely document it and see if it were ever to happen again. But we did have a discussion with one of the bigger one of the bigger businesses there.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Council? Councillor Alex or Councillor Westman?
Something like that. So I'm on this yellow stuff. Like, what kind of volume are we talking here? Was it significant or like how much?
We don't have a volume because we just had the smell of it and they seen it in the channel going through. So it went through fairly quick. By that point, it's already got to the bugs and killed everything. So we have no number of what actually come through there.
Okay, thank you. It's safe to say Granton always offers you a challenge, that's for sure. Anyways, thank you very much for that report, Paul. We appreciate it. At this point, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information. Councillor Reagan and Councillor Westman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Have a great holiday season, Paul. We'll see you in the new year.
Same to you all. Take care.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, next up, Abby Heddle's supposed to be here. Is she here? Oh, she's online. Oh, she's joining us virtually. Okay. I thought she was joining us in person. Thank you. That's okay. Oh. That's too bad. Okay, so right now, there she is. I'm pleased to welcome Abby Heddle Jacobs from the County of Middlesex, and she is going to give us an update on our half two work. So thank you for joining us, Abby. We appreciate it. We know that you might not be 100%, so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I unfortunately picked up a bug from my son. 'Tis the season. But as always, I'm happy to be here. So getting into my report, as council is aware, the Housing Accelerator Fund is a federal CMHC program that really supports municipalities in removing regulatory barriers and accelerating housing delivery through committed action plans. The township's Have To Action Plan included 5 initiatives that were all aimed at enabling more housing choice, some increased gentle density, as well as affordability. All 5 initiatives are outlined in my report, and they do include a brief status update. I'm happy to report that all Have To initiatives remain on track to be completed by mid-February, just because of the statutory requirements under the Planning Act in terms of circulation of notices and stuff like that. And staff are currently finalizing deliverables for those, coordinating with the consultants, and then working on meeting all of the reporting requirements under the CMHC contribution agreement. That really just ensures transparency, compliance, and to ensure that the township continues with funding eligibility. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Abby. And I would turn to council for comments or questions on everything that's in her report. Councillor Regan.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Abby. I was just wondering about the one condition about reducing or eliminating parking standards. And I'm thinking about, I mean, there's a standard, I think, about how many parking spaces there has to be for units. And I'm wondering if reducing that, I'm not sure, like, especially when you're in a small town, how that's going to work if people end up parking on the street is this sort of how I'm reading it anyway. So I always, get a little concerned with these because a lot of the times these are based on or for perhaps larger municipalities. So I'm just wondering how that would sort of work here if we're eliminating parking standards, saying just 1 per unit, for example.
Yeah, thanks for your question. And through you, Madam Mayor, to members of council, and Dan, feel free to jump in. So the way that we're looking at this for some of the more rural municipalities in the county is that we would allow for parking reductions for specific types of development. So that could include if we have somebody in the community who's looking to build like truly affordable units, allowing them for a reduced parking rate or a specific type of built form that would provide for a more affordable or attainable unit. So essentially, it's almost a bit of a benefit for them in the event that they're working with smaller space. Another example could be if somebody was looking to build some form of housing that was targeted towards seniors, offering them a bit of a reduced parking rate to provide for affordable units for seniors. I can confidently say that this initiative in the township's context does not contemplate eliminating parking standards for any of your zones. It's rather just looking at ways to modernize the existing parking rates and allow for reductions where they're appropriate.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry.
Dan's got his hand up there.
Yeah, through the chair, just to add on to what Abby had stated, that was excellent. What I would say is we're not looking at completely reducing and eliminating. We're looking at targeted opportunities where we could see a benefit for a reduction to the parking rates. So, we had a meeting last week, actually with a prospective developer, which is a fantastic example of an opportunity for the township to take advantage of achieving affordable housing units. And in that particular situation, guess what the hindrance was? Parking stalls. So we know that, for our existing, for instance, our 3 zone, we need 1.5 stalls per unit. If we're building 1 bedroom, affordable housing units, do we really need 2 stalls? Is there an opportunity potentially to share parking on sites where there are different formats of uses? So in particular, on this site, we have commercial opportunities, existing commercial opportunities. So establishing a residential use where there is existing commercial opportunities allows for shared parking between the 2 uses, which has worked quite successfully in other municipalities. So it's not necessarily looking at just saying, hey, no, we're not going to require parking. It's looking at potential alternative strategies that still achieve what our required parking demand would be, but allowing for a bit of flexibility in that.
So just to clarify, so this is about the number of spaces. Is also about charging for parking? Is that what they're also, because there are, no?
No, through the chair, no. We wouldn't look at implementing parking fees or anything like that. So the example that I gave was more so, in certain instances where, as Abby had mentioned, like senior housing, they may not need 2 car parking stalls per unit. Affordable housing units may not need more than 1 car per unit. In the situation of, an existing commercial development that wants to add residential housing units, we would say there's a potential to share parking stalls, because in most of those scenarios, the individuals living in the apartment units use those stalls at the off hours of the business. So they come back at nighttime, they park. The businesses use them during the daytime. So that's what we mean by a shared parking strategy. We don't currently have those standards in Lucan's bylaws. So that's certainly something that we would consider adding as part of the Have To initiative.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Abby. Thank you,
Any
Madam.
other comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Heddle Jacobs, for your report. Great to hear everything's on track with the Have To project. And I just had one question. There was a term that I didn't recognize. In the eliminate restrictions section, it refers to incorporating a form-based zoning approach. Can you just explain what that is and what we might be looking at there? Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for your question and through the mayor. So form-based zoning is essentially a planning approach or a planning tool that regulates development primarily based on physical form and the design of buildings and streets as opposed to solely through the lens of land use. Like in more simple terms, I guess it focuses on like look and feel of a community as opposed to a giant list of permitted uses. Typically when we see form-based zoning being implemented, it's very much an urban trend right now in Ontario. But we'll see municipalities start with it on main streets. And then I would just note for council's information on this topic, the province did just recently have a posting on the ERO that was released in conjunction with Bill 60, in which they are looking at implementing form-based zoning province-wide. I would just note that there wasn't a ton of like concrete information on the ERO posting related to the form-based zoning, and it really did seem like more of an information gathering exercise. But it's always helpful to know, kind of like what's on the province's radar and what we might expect to see in one of their housing bills in the next couple of years, because we're getting pretty accustomed to seeing a couple of those at least every year. So I would note that the consultants did include a chapter about form-based zoning in the jurisdictional scan, which they would have previously presented on back in the spring, I believe. And we kind of decided as a group that it wasn't necessarily feasible for the smaller municipalities in Middlesex, but there is some more information in that document as well. And I believe it is available to members of the public and council on the township's website.
Yeah, through the chair, maybe just if I can add one point. One of the major focuses of form-based code zoning is not necessarily on controlling the number of units through a prescriptive means, but more so based on what actual development can fit on that site. So what I mean by that is, traditional zoning bylaws say you can't have more than 1 or 2 units on a property. Whereas the form-based code standard would say, I don't care how many units you have on your property, as long as you can fit whatever parking you need, whatever height, as long as you fit within the setback standards that are applied in the zone, your lot coverage standards, have at her. So that's really what the difference is from form-based code to prescriptive zoning, as we would call it, that we have in Lucan right now, is it more so just says, if you can fit within these parameters, put as much development there as you can. Thank you.
There's probably more to come on that one. Any other questions? Abby, I've got a question on in the exclusionary zoning, ending exclusionary zoning, and of course, allowing the 4 units as of right, which I think is definitely where everybody's headed. I just want to make sure, recently there was a proposed development in a neighboring municipality, city, urban area, that they got themselves, I think, because they've allowed the 4 as of right, and then the proposed development really wasn't what was contemplated in allowing this. So would there be measures so that we would be protected from something like that?
Thank you for your question. So I can say that staff have worked diligently over the last 3 weeks in response to questions similar to yours to ensure that we have kind of covered off some of those loopholes that some of these more savvy developers might be looking for, excuse me, in our bylaws. And I can confidently say that what we do bring forward through the implementing zoning bylaw amendment does have regard for situations similar to what happened in the City of London. We had extensive discussion on this because, it's just one of those problems that you can't really predict when you're bringing something like this forward. So we kind of took a step back, looked at some news articles in London and other municipalities, and really took a good comprehensive look at how we could tailor our bylaws accordingly to kind of prevent situations like that from happening locally.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, one last call for questions or comments. With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that status report for information, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Abby. Hope you feel better, and all the best for a great holiday season. Hey, joining us again virtually is Raheel Javid from Dillon Consulting, who is going to, is he here? Yes, he is. Just waiting for Lisa to let him in. Okay, we've got Raheel here virtually, and he's just turning on his camera. There he is. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to you to take us through the asset management plan update for 2025.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Councillor, for inviting me for this presentation for the asset management plan update today. I appreciate the time. I have a presentation that I would like to share, and just here. So, thank you once again for inviting me to present the asset management plan update for the township for 2025. I'm going to review the overall asset management plan and its scope and the agenda first. So the first slide is the agenda. I'm going to go over the scope of work that has been assigned, and then the asset management plan, the regulatory alignment. And after that, I'm going to review the Lucan's asset management journey. And after that, the update in the 2025, which includes the alignment of the ORAC, and then the asset management policy and the enhancement from 2022 to 2025. Next slide, please. Before we jump onto the scope of this project, a quick recap of the regulatory requirements of this work. So Ontario Regulation 588/17 that suggests that all municipalities and townships in Ontario should have their proposed level of service and the financial strategy for all their asset categories in service by July 1st, 2025. That was the deadline. The project scope was designed to help meet this requirement to include the natural asset inventory and also update the asset management plan to 2025, including the inventory updates, the current state of the local infrastructure, updated level of service, risk profile, asset management, and financial strategy, and the replacement cost. We did not meet the first July 1st deadline because we needed some extra time for the data validation for complex and the core and non-core assets that becomes the part of this exercise, where historical records has some shortcomings in the data gaps. So we have to make sure that we cover all the relevant asset information and the reports and align this update with the ORAC requirement. The extra data validation was necessary to make the financial forecast to avoid any unexpected cost surprises. The natural asset inventory part was the first task, which was completed, where we have included the municipal data and created the shapefile for the big natural asset features like the greenlands, woodlands, watercourse, meadows, and stormwater grounds. The second task was the update of the actual asset management plan to update it to 2020. Next slide, please. So here's the quick overview of the regulatory requirements, and we must have to meet this 2025 asset management plan under the Ontario Regulation 588/17. So first, municipalities are now required to include the green infrastructure, which was the part of this exercise as well. So we have included the natural asset inventory in this exercise. The second was we have to ensure the current level of service metrics that are updated no older than 2 years. This keeps us our level of service reporting accurate and reflective of the actual performance based on the level of services. The third was the regulation required us to consider the growth projection from the local planning documents. So we have to align the planning, the master plan documents, and the asset management plan. This makes sure that our asset planning aligns with the community growth and the future service needs. The fourth was to update the asset inventory to reflect all the new assets that are included from 2022 to 2025. Assets that has been disposed of or any improvement resulting in the capital projects. This ensures that the data in the asset management plan remains the accurate. And finally, the development of the proposed level of service for all the assets and develop the lifecycle management strategy. The level of service, just a quick definition on that. It's simply the standard of performance where we expect what we expect from our assets. We can choose to increase the service, keep it the same level of service the way we are maintaining our assets, or let it decrease by default if we don't want to do anything. So how we can change over time, level of service changes in three ways. First, by design, like council can decide to raise the standard and fund the scope of work. The second is by default, if the investment do not keep up condition and the performance fall. The third is the external drivers like regulation, climate impact, or any service. How the level of service impact is like higher service usually means the higher capital and operating cost, even keeping the same level requirements, required predictable reinvestment to avoid growing the state of repair backlog. Now I'll go over the township's asset management journey real quick before we jump into the asset plan update. This slide simply shows why investing in the asset management matters. As per the international standard ISO 55, it is a coordinated work we do to get the real value from our assets by balancing the cost, risk, and the service benefits. In plain terms, good asset management helps us avoid any surprise asset failures and stretch the life of the buildings, pipes, valves, and roads, and deliver the reliable services. Again, slide sums up why steady investment in the asset management measures. We invest wisely over the long term so that we can balance the everyday operations risk and cost rather than reacting to the crisis. And now the asset management journey for the township. This timeline shows the steady steps the township has taken to build the organized approach to managing its infrastructure. If we walk through this timeline, 2013 was the first year when the asset management plan was started. They started the practice of inventorying the assets and thinking long term. In 2015, the first update was refine the data and the early priorities as the program grew. In 2017, the Ontario regulation comes into effect. This regulation sets the phase of the deadlines. In 2018, another asset management plan update to align with the regulations and improve the asset records and the processes. 2019, we adopted the strategic asset management plan policy. This policy covers up the principles and the governance. In 2022, another update was done focusing on the core assets, and we also concentrated on the highest priority systems. And then lastly, now in 2025, another update was done where the current level of service and the proposed level of service. And now the asset management plan update. The overview of the asset management policy here is very important to show the alignment with the plan. So the vision, again, the policy commits to the township to proactively look after its assets so that they keep delivering the services required for the community. That means that we prioritize the most important needs now and for the future to support the sustainability and the local growth to make the decision with sound financial judgment. And the goals here that the staff get a clear framework to follow. They are about creating a consistent approach across the organization, giving practical guidance to the team who manage the assets. Again, asset management considered the life cycle of the infrastructure, not just the initial cost. But the operations linked to the performance of and managing the risk to deliver services to the community. It's about balancing all the three major components together. It's balancing the risk, cost, and performance to give the community services. The 7 essential questions always comes into into play when we have to develop the asset management plan. The first step to understand the assets, what we own, where they are located. When it comes to the evaluation part, obviously every asset has the value. So evaluation of the assets and the current value is the most important thing. And then it comes to the conditions that how they're performing, what is the condition of these assets. The fourth is the level of service, which we have assessed in this update. The fifth is the timeline, everything we know that when we are going to repair those assets and what's the rehabilitation, the replacement timings, that's very important. Sixth is the decision of the financial and the risk component, that's another part of it. And then the sustainability is in the end that how we are going to afford them in long term. The municipality have, next slide, please. So this explains the level of service, a bit about like what's the target level of services and the current performances. So municipality must establish the target level of service beyond the current service levels, which includes the community expectations, which is what residents are expecting from us to deliver. Technical performance is the infrastructure condition and the reliability. The regulatory requirements is the standards that has been proposed by the provincial or the government. Once the target level of service is defined and set the course to improve the service levels from the current performance, of course, it will need the financial strategy. So this slide just simply explains how the asset condition changes over the period of time as it gets older and how the decision affects that curve. The vertical axis condition is the condition and the horizontal axis is the age. The solid line is the normal deterioration path. If we do a routine maintenance only, it deteriorates very fast. The dotted line, the green line, is marked as the rehabilitation threshold, where the targeted works can restore the condition. In this exercise, we have 4 options to look at. The first one was the unlimited budget, like if we do not have any constraint and if we have to keep the assets at the optimal condition with no funding limitations. That scenario, we ran that scenario that what is going to be the funding that is going to be needed if we have to go with that route. The second scenario was maintain the level of service, which means that if what we are currently reinvesting, if we are going to keep investing with that same level, what will be the impact and the level of services across all the infrastructure categories. The third one is the proposed level of service. The proposed level of service explores the effect of allowing some decline in the asset condition in near terms, particularly in areas where assets are approaching renewal, but can remain functional if maintained at a reduced level of service, if they can be replaced as part of a coordinated or a larger capital project, so that we can bundle it up with the other larger projects when those are due for replacement. So next slide, please. So in terms of enhancement from 2022 to 2025 asset management plan, the total replacement cost of the township assets grows by 17%. Now it's standing at 327 million. About 68% of the township assets are in very good condition. Inclusion of some more assets, including natural assets, inventory, trail work, that was also part of this 2025 update. Updates to the current level of service, so more data is being tracked in this exercise. Building condition assessment that was completed in 2023, that was also. Next slide, please. The risk profile has also been updated. Out of 2,000 assets that was being tracked from the townships, only one considered it the high risk. Total of 588 township assets falls under the moderate risk category. In 2022, 990 assets were tracked at that time, and only 12 was falling under the moderate risk category. The risk methodology is based on the likelihood of failure and the consequences of failure. That's the formula that's being used. under the likelihood of failure, we consider the condition of the assets, the performance, and the climate change. And the consequences of failures is determined by the severity or the impact on financial and the importance of the asset. Next slide, please. We took 5 years capital expenditure on each service area to see that how much we are spending in comparison with the down payment needed to replace the assets or to maintain them in a state of repair. State of good repair means that the assets that do not pass a service life and they are still providing its services when it's intended for. This exercise, the average rate excludes the one-time capital investments such as Lucan Soccer Complex or Spencer Street Park improvements or the community center renovation work. We do not include those because those are not representing the recurring annual reinvestment. So we have to look at and smooth out the effect that how much we are reinvesting over the past 5 years, averaging around to see that how much it's the impact that is required and what is the current reinvestment. So if you look at the quick snapshot right now, when we are comparing it with the cumulative average with the current replacement value, 0.6% is what we are spending overall in all asset service categories, which is below the average in Ontario. In Ontario, the average is around 2 to 3%, which is the benchmark that we are looking at in terms of reinvestments every year. Next slide, please. The state of good repair, again, the definition shows, the backlog refers to the total value of the municipal assets that have been deteriorated to poor or a very poor condition and now requires immediate rehab or a replacement to restore them at an acceptable level of services. So right now, the number shows that 17.2 million is the number that shows that the assets are the state of good repair backlog or 5.3% of the township assets total value. This tells us that while most of the assets are performing well, there are some pockets that where we need some urgent reinvestments to bring them back to the state of good repair state. Now, just a quick snapshot of the reinvestment rates comparison versus the current reinvestment rate comparison versus the should-be reinvestment rates. The way we calculated those is to see that when the assets are going to be due for the replacement, so the remaining service life of that asset and the down payment needed every year to replace that at the end of that service life versus the current reinvestment that we have, looking at the average capital investment over the past 5 years. So that's the base, that gives us the baseline reinvestment rate calculation. And this is right now, the current stage shows that we are underfunding for all the asset categories. Next slide, please. Again, 3 model scenario that we used: unlimited budget for the full life cycle need, maintain current level of services, and the proposed level of service. So we summarize the capital investment scenarios, all of them. Unlimited budget, again, we looked at the true life cycle replacement that is needed in an ideal scenario, maintain current level of services, and propose this is more like an optimized scenario for the township to recognize that some assets can safely tolerate the minor condition decline in short term, so that we can lump them up together and bundle them up into the bigger projects when it's due for the replacement. 5 key recommendations here is that the strengthening condition assessments of the program, particularly for the roads, wastewater, and the buildings. Improved coordination across department to better align growth projects with the renewable needs. Enhanced asset management data quality. That is one of the major things as well, to calculate more accurate forecasting. Integrate growth-related work with life cycle planning to reduce the duplication of the cost. And again, build build out long-term financial strategy to move forward sustainable reinvestment levels. Finally, we recommended the reinvestment level in the asset management plan on the optimized level of service scenario, which is 33.9 billion over 10 years, which works out approximately 3.9 billion per year. Next slide, please. And in the end, we have also shared the condition recommendation for the proposed level of services for each asset category. So these two slides are just a snapshot of those. Next slide. Next slide. And that's it. Any question?
Okay, thank you very much for that detailed report, Raheel. There's certainly lots of information in the full document for us to digest. I know you touched on it when you first started, but I had difficulty hearing. I just wondered why it was that we missed the July 1st deadline for getting this done.
So we have some data quality issues that we wanted to, complete those in a way so that we don't rush to the conclusion of with the half-cooked information. There were some data discrepancies that we have to finalize those. There are obviously, we know that deadline was there, but there are so many other municipalities in the townships as well that are struggling with the same issues like data constraints. They also miss those deadlines. They are still working on those. So yeah, that's one of the things that we also know, and that time that this is something that has been passed, but we don't want it to rush onto that because this is a very important update, and we wanted to work on that more. We wanted to concentrate more on the quality.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Regan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. You mentioned a number of times about future levels of service, future needs, some of the barriers to delivering service. I don't know whether it's a question for you or maybe for staff, but how do we accurately assess what our future needs are to make sure that we've got the assets in place? And I know nobody has a crystal ball, but I'm just wondering, it's kind of important we think about, I just think about how fast 8 years went, right? Or 7 years. And I'm just thinking all of a sudden now we're, so I'm just thinking about in the next, the next 10 years or so. So I'm just wondering how we would sort of get ahead of the curve. So I'm not sure who wants to answer that, but staff or Ron's going to take a shot at it. Okay, good.
Through the mayor, I'll take a stab at it first. This is, yeah, the numbers in here are kind of mind-boggling. And I do believe, and Jeff, I'd ask Jeff to weigh in on this as well as Darcy. I don't like comparing ourselves to others because really it doesn't matter what they do. We have to look after what we have. And I think council's done a very good job looking after what we have with the dollars that we have. And we're not perfect. We never purport to be perfect. However, I think we've done strategic investments and we've been able to mine some grant money when the time is right to ensure that we've continue to provide good services to the ratepayers at a reasonable cost. And we will continue to do that going forward. So, I think it's a good document to have, but it's not thou shalt. I think it should be used as a guide. I'll put it that way. And then maybe, I don't know if Jeff or Darcy wants to add anything to it, or Catherine even.
One of the thank you, and through the mayor, one of the things I would add is this is kind of a, I hate to say it, like a living document, but the more up-to-date data you have to put in it, the better your understanding of what this asset management plan is trying to tell you. And again, I'll use the example of next year. I would like to do the asphalt assessment. Last time we did it was in 2019. So we only could estimate what the asphalt conditions are 5 years later by using industry guidelines. So we really don't know the condition of our asphalt. So when we try to put a fair or good on a block of road on Saintsbury, we're just doing that based on industry standards from 2019. So I think one of the things that we have to keep doing with asset management, and this is all municipalities are struggling with this, is to keep up with the data that goes into it. And the more up to date data you can do, the better your asset management is going to reflect in some of these numbers. So one of the things, and I've talked to Raheel about this, is we're going to start videoing our sanitary lines as part of our maintenance program, but that data will be able to tell us what the conditions are rather than saying, well, the pipe is 60 years old, so you're going to have to replace it in 30, which we're finding out that due to the clay and the installation, we have good sanitary lines in the ground. So I think, as we go forward and we keep adding the data and we keep updating this plan, we can see how the numbers play out. And then obviously the big elephant in the room will be the expansion on the sanitary side of investing, $13 million into a system that will change that number drastically, and that sort of thing. So there's lots of things that will move forward with this plan, but this gives us the ability to move forward.
Thanks. To follow up or anything? Okay. Any other comments or questions from council? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Raheel, for the presentation and the report. I wanted to ask about our annual reinvestment. So I think it says we're not really, renewing assets as much as we should be. We're 0.6% versus the 2 to 3% benchmark. And, I think we're fine. We're actually just talking about our budget earlier this meeting, and, it's challenging to find the money even to, I guess, meet that 0.6% annual reinvestment rate. So if we're gonna be, if we ought to be or should be increasing that 2 to 3%, even if it's gradually phasing that in over a number of years, or getting to that $3.4 million per year investment in our infrastructure, how do we fund that? Because if we had to go from, just if we're doing 2 million annually to 3.4, the increase to our tax rates would be astronomical. So I guess, how do you even start with that issue as a rural municipality?
Thank you, Councillor. So I think the most important part is, like you already mentioned, is the gradual increase. So I know this is not something that can be done overnight. There are obviously setup could be in phases where we can improve, implement these tax levy where to offset some of those shortcomings or the shortfalls that we are facing right now, because these are when we're looking at 0.6% versus even like going to look at 2%, the gap is huge. So it cannot be done like in one you can say one annual payment or something. It is a gradual increase. That's the recommendation we can always discuss. I mean, and that's the thing. Like I have also discussed it with Jeff as well, that if we can have those gradual increment plans for the tax levy, that can be done. We can definitely find some avenues to implement those, and then going forward and see that how we can fund those. And another aspect of looking at it is that how we can adjust some of those level of services, where I think the most important part is to combine bundle up some of those renewal activities. So let's say if the road condition is a little bit fair or poor, and we know that we can keep allowing them right now based on the traffic and everything that is right now going in that, and we can allow that to deteriorate further, because there is in 2 or 3 years down the road, there is and we are going to use that and club that into that major project, then that's going to be a good strategy to do one of those applying those strategies as well. So those are the couple of suggestions that we have right now that can be used for the long term.
Okay, thank you for that. And maybe as a follow-up, we should be, I guess what's recommended in the plan though, is to be increasing that investment rate. And I guess, does that mean, looking at tax levy and either setting more money aside in reserves on an annual basis? Like, is that just expected over the next 10 years or so?
That's correct. Yes. So when we apply that proposed level of service in the scenario-based investment options for the proposed level of services, 3.4 million annual is something that is going to be needed. And if the gradual increase can be done through the tax levy over the 10 years, I think that's one of the best strategy that we can look down the road.
Okay, thanks for that. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, we have this asset management plan and we look at it. I feel like at least us around council, I mean, staff use it probably a lot more than we do, but I think we more or less see it, when it's getting updated, or definitely once a year we'll get an update from you guys on the status of the plan and getting the plan updated. But I question, or I wonder about how well we're using the plan and how well the plan is integrated in all of our processes at the township, whether it be budgeting or our capital works plan. I see there is a capital works plan within the asset management plan, but I guess maybe I don't see a really strong link between our budget and the process that we're just going through right now and our asset management plan. And can you just speak to that maybe, and how we can ensure that those two things are aligned? Just because, I think it's an important document, and if it's recommending that we have to increase funds, I guess, how are we addressing that in our budgeting process? Maybe you can answer it, maybe staff can comment on it.
Just a quick answer on that, and then maybe staff can comment. Like Jeff mentioned, this is a live document. It's when we develop the asset management plan for the 5 years, it's meant to be used for the budgeting purposes. These are, and that's the issue that we have seen in other like townships and municipalities, that once they develop the plan, that are not actively aligned with the budget strategies. So the best practice should be that, and that's the international standards always mention, that when you have the document available that can be used, we can drive those asset management values to the budget planning process, which can be done like every time when we go for the budget planning, what's the infrastructure development values are coming from the asset management plan. Those are the very important key takes that has been recommended in the asset management plan, which can be a part of the budget process as well. So that's just my 2 cents. Maybe staff can comment more on that.
Yeah, and maybe the easy one is to connect it to the budget, but also the asset management plan does connect further to funding, when we put in for grants and that sort of thing, and we start talking about our level of service, and we start talking about our overall condition of our road system, that this is where we can go back and say our road system, yeah, we have a percentage that of our roads are at excellent, but we also have a percentage that are poor, and that's where we can use the asset management plan, to see how that's going, and then beyond the grants, then we can use it to grade ourselves on how our projects are doing. So when we do, and I keep using roads because I'm a road person, if we keep seeing that our roads are starting to increase into excellent and good, are we spending too much money, or are they going back into the poor and fair and poor categories? Are we not spending enough? So the asset management plan can be used to grade us as we're going. The hard part is to lump all the assets. This is where you got to really dig into it, is a pickup truck only lasts 9 years. A water main section lasts 90 years. So when you talk about a pickup truck being in poor condition after so many years versus a water main that is maybe going to hit poor when it hits 75, that's when you really got to start looking into the numbers a little more closely rather than standing back and seeing how much we're investing in some of these categories.
Thank you. I'll have one last comment. I'll be done. Yeah, I just think we made in 2025, we made a really big investment in this asset management plan, right? Like we put a big budget in there. I think we spent close to $100,000 on this, and it is a really important tool. And I know we probably don't see it as around the horseshoe how much it does get used, but I think it's very important that we are using this and it's not just a check the box sort of thing. So I'm confident that we're not doing that. But my last question, and maybe this is to staff, just because I haven't seen it before, except maybe for the first time in this plan, within the appendices, Appendix B has a road safety audit report. And so now that we've seen that, I'm just wondering, is that have we seen this before, or are we just wondering what's the, I guess, the purpose of this, and maybe next steps with this document? Are there any next steps that we're taking with the findings that came within that now that it's out there?
Yeah, and through the mayor. So we did do an assessment on our gravel roads, and two things took place. There are two separate items, inventory and a safety audit. And I asked that the safety audit be included as well as the inventory in the asset management plan, just to highlight that that we do have some projects and we do have some items that we're going to have to address going forward. So I'll be honest, the safety audit was done the year before and completed late in 2024, and then included in 2025 of the asset management plan. So we really haven't had a chance to break into that and start looking at what projects we could do there. There's a list, and I believe we worked on a list of the top ones, but that's where it's come through. So this is the first time maybe I believe I brought it forward that we had completed it. It's maybe the first time that you've actually had a chance to see what was done out there and what kind of list that we've got to improve on our roads.
Okay, great. And sorry, just missed it, but I guess do we have any next steps with this document? Or I'm just thinking because I guess it has some risk assessments, and I'm just wondering if we're then kind of working that into our projects, just maybe to address some of those higher risk items. Is that maybe coming down the pipeline?
And yeah, definitely coming down the pipeline. I know for sure that's and we've talked about it, that safety on some of our rural roads need to be addressed. It's one of our comments that we do get. So that will come forward, and we'll start looking at these projects to move forward with.
All right, great. Thanks. That's all I got. Great work, everyone, on the report. Looks great. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hodgins. Any other comments? I might just on the rural safety audit. So that's a lot of work actually that we're doing on the good roads side of things to advocate with the province to look for some funding for this sort of work, because it's not what comes usually out of these like the risk assessments and the safety audits. Like the fixes aren't huge. It might be some trimming. It might mean a new guardrail. It might mean something like that isn't, that doesn't mean, redesigning the road system or anything. So we've been working diligently with Good Roads to try to advocate with the province to look for some funding for rural communities, because a lot of these assessments have been done because of the demand of having to update the asset management. And you have these reports, and often like it's the low hanging fruit, but often that gets overlooked for some of the bigger projects. So hopefully there'll be announcements from the Good Roads side of things, but I mean, these sort of audits are important for rural communities, but we can't just let it stay on the shelf either, so. Okay, if there are no other questions, I know that obviously we've just seen this when the agenda was posted, but I know staff has some work to do to go back and digest it, and I believe that there'll be a report coming in the new year from staff on the adoption of it. So we'll just be accepting this report tonight for information. But thank you very much for the work that's been done to this point, Raheel. We do appreciate it, and we look forward to implementing it as time goes on. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great holiday season. With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that asset management plan as presented for information, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the minutes. We have in front of us the minutes from December 2nd. If nothing needs to be changed on those, I would ask for a mover and a seconder so that we can approve those as circulated, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? That's carried. Under the consent agenda, there are a number of items. We're going to pull the 9.1 for discussion. And so then 9.2 on to 9.12. I know Councillor Regan, you had a question on 9.2. Your mic.
It is on. Thanks. Okay, so it's just a quick question just about the OPP, the cap of the 11%. So, and it might be just a question for Ron. When I was reading through it, it talks about the cap for the 2026 billing year being 11%. 2025, 26. It says excluding any service enhancements. And that just got my attention because to me, that means that there might be something coming down the pipe. There might be something new. There might be other costs involved. And I'm just wondering if we know what those costs might be. Do we need to save for that? I know policing is expensive. And I'm not quite sure what service enhancements really are, but it just caught my attention. Is it just an additional cost over that 11%? So I was just asking whether or not we have any information on that.
So through the mayor, to answer your question, I think we got to realize that this is the generic letter that goes out to every municipality that pays for OPP coverage. So I think, and I'm going back a few years, but I think when this all started, we get the basic level of service. If the municipality wants to pay for an additional officer, for example, that would be an enhanced service that would be 100% billed to that municipality that requested it. So it would be for any additional services that any municipality wishes to have.
Okay.
So it could vary across a number of different types of service.
I do no. I just to follow up. I do understand that. No, it's just the way it's written. It's at their discretion if there's any service enhancements. That's what was my concern, is that they may feel that there's, and that's fine, but they may feel there's something extra needed, and we may or not have, any say in it or not. But you know what I'm saying? Like, just it sounded to me like it was just at their discretion. That was my concern. And if that just pops up all of a sudden, we're getting a bill. It was just a concern. No. But
through the
that may not be
mayor,
how it works.
I can certainly ask the Police Services Board for a clarification on that,
Right.
on that part of the letter.
All right. Okay. No, I just wanted to check. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that. Did council have any other questions on 9.2 to 9.12 before? Okay, then what I will do is I will ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that for information. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. And then the Conservation Authority Board submissions. That we're gonna pull. I know Councillor Hodgins wants to bring forth a motion. I don't know if there's discussion on it. We've had requests from both Upper Thames and I believe through you for ABCA for a motion. So I will turn it over to you to start the conversation going.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. So I believe it's also attached, so under 9.1, item 2, there's some information there provided from the UTRCA, so our other conservation authority. More information about the bill and their position on it. And then they have attached to that an example of municipal resolution. We're seeing quite a few of these being passed by municipalities just in support of their partner conservation authorities. So the general manager from UTRCA did reach out to us and provide that draft wording. I noticed when I circulated it, there was a little typo. It does say the municipality of Lucan Biddulph. Obviously, that should be changed to the township of Lucan Biddulph. And then I made a little addition to one of the whereas to add and ABCA where it references UTRCA. But other than that, it's basically the motion or the resolution as proposed by the UTRCA. So I would like to move a motion that we pass this resolution. That's right.
You to motion that and then second it by Councillor Regan. I don't know, did we get it for the screen? It's quite large and okay, Councillor Hodgins did email it. Okay, good. So you've all seen it. And we'll just change that to township. So you don't have to pull it up, Lisa, because it was all emailed. I don't know if there was any other discussion on this or not. I'll just say to anybody watching, we'll include obviously the motion on the agenda so you can see the whole thing. But it is in keeping with what Upper Thames has requested of other municipalities. And I believe the other municipalities that are on Upper Thames in our area have they've either passed it or it's through a notice of motion on their agendas. So if there's no other discussion on that one, we've had, and I will just say we've had a number of discussions over the last number of meetings about the concerns that the conservation authorities have with regards to proposed legislation. So, all right, if nobody has any other comments, that was moved by Councillor Hodgins and seconded by Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. On to correspondence. There again was items received. Did council want to speak to any of those? If not, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive and file those items of correspondence, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Committee reports. Blue Water.
Nothing to report.
CEDC.
Nothing to report this evening, Madam Mayor.
Lake Huron, we did have a meeting on or I guess on the 4th. It was right after our council meeting. And for the most part, it was items that were usual in nature. And then we were in camera for some legal matters and updates there. So there wasn't too much to report on that. Nothing from fire boards. The Granton Fire Board did have a meeting last week, I guess, or 2 weeks ago, last week, I don't know. And so the minutes will be forthcoming there. ABCA.
Just a couple of quick updates. Yeah. just there's quite a few attachments there. On the ABCA side, we do have a meeting this Thursday, and that's going to be followed by the annual Christmas dinner. And there's a set of minutes attached from our last meeting, November 20th. And yeah, within those minutes, there was an interesting a hearing that went. It was a permit was approved after the hearing. And then you'll also see there is that item number 5 is General Manager Heinbuch's report, and just shows a ton of the activity that's been going on there. So you know, they're keeping busy, business as usual as they go through this this process with the province. But that's it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Parks and Recreation.
Nothing, Madam Mayor. We're going to meet January 29th.
Okay, Trails and Connectivity.
Nothing to report, no.
Okay, and Finance Committee are the draft minutes there in front of you. On to staff reports. Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one written report and one verbal report. The written report before council tonight is in regards to the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board. Of course, at the last council meeting, we sent off our former chief, Steve Tays, after his retirement after 25 years. And as a result of that, there's obviously a vacancy in the chief chair. So the discussion at the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board was the recommendation coming forward to both Lucan Biddulph Council and Perth South Council to appoint Brian Bates as the acting chief. And then as he is the current deputy chief, that then creates a vacancy in there. And Brad Mayer is the recommended candidate for the acting deputy chief position. Now, as part of that meeting as well, it came to light that the existing agreement between Perth South and Lucan Biddulph with regards to the operations of the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board was expiring December 31st, 2025. So in the interest of continuing on, although how long it will be is the question. So it was felt that a year, up to a year extension would be an appropriate amount of time to extend that agreement. So the recommendation before, like I said, before both Perth South Council and Lucan Biddulph Council tonight is that Council approve the extension of the agreement with the Township of Perth South for the operation and governance of the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Department, and further that Council appoint Mr. Brian Bates as the acting chief and Brad Mayer as the acting deputy chief of the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area effective immediately, and further that the revised appointment persons fire department's bylaw be adopted.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions or comments on that report? Okay, so Ron has told you what the recommended motion is, and I would look for a mover and a seconder for that phase. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you very much. And your verbal.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to report we have a new Director of Emergency Services / Fire Chief. Mr. Ron DeBrouwer is the new person. He's accepted the position. He will start on the 2nd of January. Just a bit of background. We had it was quite a lengthy process. We had 21 applications. We had 7 interviews, so we fully, we interviewed a third of the applicants. There was 2 rounds of interviews, and yeah, I think the committee, the interview committee consisted of 4 people, the chairs of both fire area boards, plus myself, plus I called it the technical advisor, the full-time firefighter who also is a consultant. That person was actually recommended from Lambton Shores. So again, happy to announce that Mr. Ron DeBrouwer is the successful candidate, and we welcome Ron to the fold. And again, his first day will be January 2nd. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Ron. Any questions or comments on the verbal? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just could you comment if it was a unanimous decision amongst the committee to select him?
Yes, yes, it was. It was unanimous. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks very much, Ron. There are no reports from any other directors, so I will look at the table to see if anybody has anything verbal to bring to us tonight. Nope, nope, lots of heads shaking, okay. Other business, there is just the one item that I believe will be dealt with in the new year at some point. And any notices of motion? Counselor comments? Yes. So yes, exactly. We wish on behalf of staff and council, we certainly wish not only our residents, but our businesses and anybody that we do business, all the best for holiday season and all the best for 2026. My goodness, 2026, who'd have thought? And a reminder that we have one meeting in January and it is January the 13th. We have in front of us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bylaws. So the motion in front of us is that I'll just briefly go over them. It's the bylaw to adopt the community improvement plan, the appointment bylaw for the Lucan Biddulph Fire Department and Biddulph Blanchard Fire Department. That's the appointment bylaw. The execution of agreement for the agreement between Lucan Biddulph and Perth South, the fees bylaw, and the confirming bylaw and the comprehensive zoning bylaw for Timber Ridge. So the motion in front of us is that bylaws 48-2025 through 52-2025 inclusive and 207-2025 be read first, second, third, and final time and be adopted. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? That is carried. And resolve that our council meeting, the last one of the year, be adjourned at 7:45 p.m. A mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Happy holidays, happy new year, and we'll see you in January.